The damage the Biden administration has caused to America's reputation on the world stage is immeasurable. I mean, the fingerprints of their ineffective foreign policy are all over. The disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, the failure to deter the Russian invasion of Ukraine. From my vantage point in working on the issue of international religious freedom, that has turned 180 degrees, leaving the heads of many international leaders spinning. We've got a woke military, and then we have this inability to stand up to China. Now, with all the domestic issues facing voters, where do these foreign policy and national security issues factor in? Well, joining me now to discuss this and more is former Secretary of State and Director of the CIA, Mike Pompeo. He served during the Trump administration. Secretary Pompeo, welcome back to the program.
It's great to be back with you, Tony, on this special day.
Yes, it is. And we're going to be tracking this very closely, fairly optimistic as we see some of the trends. But I want to ask you about that. I know you are out all across the country. In fact, I'm going to be with you in Southern California later this week. What are you hearing and seeing across America? All right, we have Secretary Pompeo, I think, now by phone. Secretary, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here, Tony. Sorry about that.
That's all right. So I was asking you what you are hearing and seeing as you've been traveling across the country.
Tony, much like you've seen, I've seen people from every state, every county, seriously engaged in reclaiming the greatness of America. They can see what's happening in their own families. Things are more expensive. Their schools are becoming dangerous battlefields, transgenderism, CRT, walking away from faith, and becoming more secular. They can see all the things they're about to today take this back on behalf of America and their families. Highly energized, can see that their lives are not as good as they were just 20 months ago or 22 months ago, and I think they're going to vote for change.
You mentioned the current environment economically, and there's no denying the fact you've got 8+% increase in inflation. You're paying, nearly $5 a gallon for gasoline, depending on where you live or what you drive. If you drive diesel, it's over $5, and those are factors. You can't put food on the table and gas in the tank. But you also pointed out, and this is where I think the spin is going to come in after tonight, that the moral, the social, those issues had nothing to do with it. But that's not what I'm saying.
No, it's people can feel it in terms of their money lasting to the end of the month, but they can also see that there's a set of leaders in Washington, D.C., on Capitol Hill and in the White House who don't return to the Judeo-Christian heritage of our country, who don't think about the nation as having a noble founding and instead suggest somehow there's an oppressor class and we are a racist country, and don't support our friends in Israel, but rather undermine America's place on the world stage. I think people can feel that walking away from the understandings that have built communities of faith and built families, and they're exhausted by it. They can see this as extremism, and they're not going to stand for it any longer.
Well, and I think they understand that that's the source of our strength. It is a large part of our identity, but it is a source of our strength and our ability to stand firmly on the world stage. Because without that foundation, we're tossed to and fro from every wind that blows our way. All right, Mr. Secretary, we're up against a break, but coming back, I want to talk about your new book out, Never Give an Inch. It's about your time at the CIA, so we want to talk about that next. Mike, thanks so much for sticking with us. Now, you got a book coming out in January, Never Give an Inch, Fighting for the America I Love. Tell us about it.
Tony, you've seen in your time watching governments come here and go, if you begin to round the corners on things that matter most, not that you can't compromise on the level of particulate matter, something like that, but on the things that matter, the protection of the unborn, standing behind the founding ideas of our country. If you give even an inch, they will take a foot and indeed a mile. You can see it in our woke military today. You can see it in the Green New Deal. These are things that we tried to find common ground and then just walked over the animating ideas that have made America so great. And so Never Give an Inch talks about how for 4 years we delivered on behalf of the American people by putting them first. And then the subtitle, right? The America I Love. It's the America you love too, Tony, and it is worth fighting for. I know there's days when people get frustrated and anxious, But this fight to preserve the American way of life and our heritage, our cultural heritage here in the United States matters an awful lot. And it is America I love, worth fighting for, and I'm proud of the work we did for my 4 years, first as CIA director and then as Secretary of State.
Well, and you should be. I was more than a spectator in being able to work with you in both roles. But in particular, in fact, just recently, someone was asking me something about where was I on January the 6th. And I said, I know exactly where I was at.
That's right.
I was in the inner chambers in the conference room with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and we were actually praying for the nation. And that is, I think, the source of your strength, but it's also the source of the strength of our nation. As you told me, as we did that several times, we had pastors that would come in and pray for the nation, pray for you. That, to your knowledge, that was the first time that type of prayer had taken place in the State Department.
I think that's true, and I think that's really sad. And I regret that it's likely not happening today. It was important for me, Tony, personally, to have you and others, believers around, recognizing that these problems were bigger than we were, that we needed to turn to Him, who gave us all of our rights and gave us the dignity that is simply a result of His grace and the fact that He bestowed that on each of us. And if you don't understand that as a senior leader in the United States government, I don't know how it is you find your way forward. I also thought it was important for my team to see that we were going to be an American nation first, but that we were never going to walk away from religious freedom and keeping faith in the public square. It was important for American diplomacy. It was important to make America a beacon to the world, and I was incredibly proud. And I hadn't thought about for a bit the fact that on January 6th of 2021, you and a group of pastors were in my office praying for our country, even at that difficult moment.
You know, far from being a handicap, I watched that as a strength for you, because I remember, I think in Cairo was one of your first speeches as Secretary of State, and you made very clear that you were a Christian, a follower of Jesus Christ. And my experience, again, as chair of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, I met with a lot of these leaders of Muslim countries and other countries. They may not agree, but they respect someone who has that type of foundation, because they operate. 80% of the world operates from a faith framework. And for you to say, I'm a Christian, that's how I see the world, they actually respected that.
You know, Tony, as we sit here today and folks are still finishing up work, going to the polls, or many have already voted, America's strength has always been that it is a place of religious diversity, but leaders around the world respect others who are disciplined in their faith, even if it's different from their own. And the work you did at USERF, the work that the administration did, helping Christians in Nigeria and in northern Iraq, and protecting Muslim Uyghurs in China, all across the world, making sure that people of faith had the capacity to exercise their faith the way that they intended and they wanted to, was something that was really important to us as a international matter. But as we saw during COVID, when we had churches shut down, it matters an awful lot here at home. We have to protect it with enormous energy, enormous vigor. And I actually think folks today who go to the polls and vote are going to support those candidates who understand why that matters so much to making America the incredibly special place that it is.
Secretary, it's hard to really fathom how much ground has actually been lost when it comes to religious freedom, both domestically and from the standpoint of our promotion of that abroad. I mean, a lot was accomplished in the Trump administration, a lot. Can we recover that?
Oh, of course. But it's going to take the American people demanding it, and then those leaders obeying both the folks who elect them and obeying Jesus, understanding the commandments that He laid down for us. And, you know, there are many leaders that aren't Christian. They come from other faiths. But to walk away from who you are, the views that shape you as a human being, just because you entered public service, is an enormous disservice to our country and to your responsibilities. I do think we can get it back. I think today will be a good marker. It'll move us towards that further. But in the end, Tony, you know, this is something that we all have to continue to work on, to be diligent about, to prioritize, to speak about very openly and clearly, and make known our understanding that this matters to the United States.
That's right. We've got to pray, we've got to vote, and we've got to stand, as we say here
Amen.
at FRC. Mike Pompeo, always great to talk with you. I will see you in Southern California on Thursday night.
We'll see you in just a couple days. Thank you, Tony. Bless you. Have a great day. And everyone who has voted, go out and get it done.
All right. Mike Pompeo, former Secretary of State, Director of the CIA, and Congressman from the state of Kansas as well. New book coming out in January. You can pre-order it on Amazon. Never Give an Inch, Fighting for the America I Love.